up guys, welcome back to Mainly Movies, the channel where we talk about, well, mainly movies. So this weekend I got to see Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This movie I was actually slightly anticipating this year because of the producer Guillermo del Toro, who has done some of my favourite mythological movies, and I was looking forward to this movie. The story follows a group of kids that go to the Bellows house on Halloween night. When they're there, they discover a book written by Sarah Bellows. In this book there are a whole bunch of scary stories, which may be occurring in real life.
They make us who we are. That can be scary.
Eat it, Harold.
So this is the perfect time for this movie to come out. With Halloween next month, it's just a great time for it to come out. I'm kind of in the mood for a lot of horror movies, and I thought this was a good time for the movie to come out. Also, like I said at the start of the video, Guillermo del Toro is producing this movie, so I thought, you know, with the name like that, this movie could be pretty good. And the director of this movie had directed some movies I haven't actually seen, like The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and I don't know whether he directed it, but he had some sort of contribution with the movie Polaroid. I haven't seen those movies, but I've heard they've had some good reviews. I don't know much about Polaroid, but The Autopsy of Jane Doe I've heard is a pretty good film. But because Guillermo del Toro is in the cast, you gotta expect practical effects, and this is where I get into my positive. The practical effects of this movie is really good. There is a bit of CGI in this movie, and for most part it's not that bad, and when it is kind of noticeable, it didn't really take me out of the movie too much. I thought it was done well, it was done tastefully. The practical effects stand out the most, especially one story, which is Harold, which is the Scarecrow. I thought that was one of the best ones and was one of the best practical effects in the movie. The cinematography in this movie is good as well. I like the greenish bluish kind of lighting when it's a darker shot. I thought that was really good, especially later on in the film when they're in this police station. I thought the color of the screen is really good, and it gives you that kind of nighttime dark feel, and I thought it was really good. And it also makes the creatures look a bit more creepier, and they use it a lot with a lot of other stories in the movie, and I thought it worked. The kids in this movie, now, if you watch my Child's Play review, you would know that I'm not the biggest fan of kids being the protagonists in horror movies, but in this film, because it's for a younger audience, I feel like I can give it a bit more leeway. And for the most part, I did enjoy the performances by the kids. They were pretty good. They had a lot to do, and there was obviously the comedic kid, and then there was the smart kid. And by the way, a lot of these kids are really smart, which is sort of a negative because they were really smart, but that didn't really bother me too much. But the kids for the most part were pretty good, especially the main lead. Also, they did a good job at setting this movie in 1968. The clothes and the scenery itself looks like it would be 1968. I don't know so much about the dialogue. The dialogue felt a little bit modern, but I wasn't really expecting too much from a movie like this to be historically accurate, so it didn't really bother me too much. But I do like how they had the Nixon election, and the whole Vietnam aspect of this movie was pretty interesting. Also, another thing I love about this movie, because I am watching Breaking Bad at the moment, I'm watching the whole TV show, I'm just about to finish season 2 at the moment. I want to kind of finish it before El Camino comes out because I want to review that movie. But Dean Norris, the guy who plays Hank in Breaking Bad, who's one of my favourite characters, appears in this movie, so that was awesome to see him in the movie as well. Although his character doesn't really have much to do, I still enjoyed his presence. Now to get into the negatives of this movie, the main character in this movie has a backstory that doesn't contribute to the story whatsoever, and that's why I was saying Dean Norris, because Dean Norris plays the dad of the main lead of this film, and he doesn't really have anything to do. Really, he's just kind of thrown into the movie, and her backstory doesn't contribute to anything in the story. But I do like the guy that she's kind of the love interest of her. I forgot what the kid's name is. I'm not even really going to bother looking it up. But his backstory in the movie was interesting. It didn't really play a part to the story, but it played a part to the time that it's set in. Because his backstory is that he's a draft dodger. He got conscripted into the Vietnam War, and he didn't end up going. He was a draft dodger, and I thought that was pretty interesting. But the main lead's backstory wasn't interesting to me at all. Another thing about the movie is the structure of the second act really kind of annoyed me because it was very repetitious. The story gets written, a character gets involved, and it's the end of that story, and it just repeats that cycle for pretty much the whole second act of the movie. Now there was a scene in the movie later on where they go to a hospital and they were doing something different because I wanted them to do something different because the whole second act was basically that structure. And I was thinking to myself, you know, they better do something different because this is starting to get a little bit boring. It was really fast paced and everything, and it built a lot of tension. It was just really repetitive, and I wanted them to do something different. And when something did happen that was different, when they kind of do a little bit of detective work in this hospital, I thought they're doing something good and something different, and I thought this is going to help the movie. But then they just go back into that cycle again. And I mean, for the most part, this movie is about the stories, and I didn't have a problem with the stories. The stories felt different, like the creatures and the stories behind the actual story itself were different. It was just the structure of the stories. It builds up the same and then it pays off the same. And for me, that didn't work very well. Another positive about the movie that I forgot to mention is this movie does a great job at building suspense and tension. Don't get me wrong, it is really good. And for a movie that's, you know, rated M or PG-13 in the United States, it does a good job at building tension, and you do feel like people are in a bad situation. For the most part, it's really good, and I had no problem with the tension building, and especially with the Harold one, with the sound design of the corn crops blowing in the winds. That sounded really good, and that built tension, and for the most part, like I said, because they have to get to their friends and all that who are in the stories as it's been written out, there's this building suspense, you know, of them trying to get there, and you don't want to see these characters get hurt or anything. So that is pretty good. It's just the repetitious cycle of the second act with the structure. And now that I mentioned that the movie was rated M, and I know the book, even though I haven't personally read the book, I didn't grow up reading the book or anything. The stories seem interesting, the book seems interesting, and I wouldn't mind reading it. I don't know if I'm a little too old now, but I mean, couldn't hurt. But I know those books were aimed towards a younger audience. I feel like this movie would have been a bit better if it was a bit more of a higher rating, like an R in the United States or an MA here, just because it would have done the movie a little bit more of a favour. There's a couple of deaths in the movie. I'm not going to spoil who or how, whatever, but there is a couple of deaths in the movie which I feel like it would have worked better if it was a higher rated film. Again, this movie is targeted to a younger audience, so I don't really put that as much of a negative because I know what they were trying to do and who the target audience of this film is. But for the most part, I do recommend Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It does a great job at building suspense. The acting in it is good, the cinematography is good, the practical effects is good, and the CGI isn't that bad. It's just a couple of things like how repetitive the second act can be, and the third act of the movie as well isn't amazing. I didn't mind it. It wasn't great either, but I will say that I would probably end up watching this next Halloween or something like that because it is a good Halloween holiday themed movie, and for the most part it was pretty scary in some parts. Not really for me personally, but I can see if you're a younger audience and you watch this movie, maybe 12, 13 or 14, you'll find this movie pretty scary for the most part, and yes, and that is why I'm going to give Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark a 7 out of 10. So guys, like I said in my other video, I'm going to be doing my Halloween horror special all next month, starting from the 1st of October. I'm going to be doing my special Is It Really That Bad, which will be out on October 31st, as well as a review for Halloween on October 31st. Next week I'm going to try and see Joker on the first night. I want to see that movie. I don't know whether I'm going to see it first night. Hopefully I can, so I can review it for you, but if not, I will eventually end up seeing it to review it. As well as Zombieland Double Tap comes out, and Terminator Dark Fate, I'm pretty sure comes out next month. But for pretty much majority of the month, I'm going to be busy doing a lot of Halloween horror movie themed videos. So definitely stay tuned to that. The first one will be next week on Tuesday. I'm not going to say what movie it is yet, but I'm going to be doing my first Halloween horror special review. So stay tuned for that. So guys, thank you for watching the video. I appreciate it so much if you watched the video. If you enjoyed it, then that's unbelievable. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. So stay tuned for more, and I'll see you guys next time.